Welcome to the Gen AI podcast, where the future meets fun and tech talk trends. Get ready to dive into the world of artificial intelligence like never before. Your hosts, Dale, Alan, Greg, and Val, are about to take you on a wild ride through the AI universe. So, buckle up, tune in, and let the AI adventure begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the first episode of our second season. I think we're calling this our second season, Al, because we ended off last year on episode 20, which we can say that's our first season. So we'll aim for 20 episodes a season. I think that's how it works. We just work it out as we go. We make it up. Sounds about right. But
Season 2 sounds nice.
Exactly. Season 2 sounds good. But it's been an absolute massive bang to the start of the year with a lot happening, and I actually don't know where to start. I haven't seen you this year, and you're the other side of the world. Where are you to start off with?
I am in New York right now. I just finished up in Philadelphia at the CPM conference. Came here, got a couple of meetings, and then I'm flying back in 2 days. So
nice. Jet setting all over the world. You didn't manage to chat to President Trump, did you, on that 500 billion?
No. I mean, like, I think he's earmarked about 499 for me personally, not even for M-Plan.
Lovely.
No,
Lovely.
not really.
I mean, imagine what they would do for this podcast, right? When you reinvest.
I know, right? First of all, I'd be able to have a camera that's decent with me.
A full crew.
Oh,
yeah,
we could turn the podcast into a reality show. That would be amazing.
Exactly. But as per usual, Greg sends his regards. He is traveling. He was with you at the conference, but I think he's in.
He was with me at CPM, and I think he's in Washington right now. So we sort of went different directions.
Yeah. And as per usual, we have no idea where Val is. He's probably sleeping, it's the middle of the night in Australia. But we have been in touch. There's signs of life, and we will get him on the podcast one day. So let's see. Let's see how season 2 goes.
It could be season 3, episode 1.
It could be
like a big hook to get the Netflix renewal.
Absolutely. So let's start. We mentioned the 500 billion. I think let's start there because that's probably the biggest thing, the biggest bit of news that's happened. There's a few other things on the go. Actually, before we do that, I do want to give our listeners some ammo because you said on this very podcast, you spoke about the death of SAS. Yeah. And a few months later, all of the guys that follow you, like Satya Nadella, started saying it as well.
He does not follow me, but yes, of course. Right? We were out at dinner and I told him and he started repeating it. Oh, I'm joking.
But seriously, that's awesome, right? It's recorded. We said it and then he came out and said it. So you heard it here, folks. We got Alan Mosca. You don't need anyone else. But yeah, the 500 billion. What's your take? Where do you want to start with that? Texas.
I've got 2 views about 500 billion US announcement plus the UK announcement, which is, comparatively peanuts. But and I think the first thing that I'm going to get out is that money, a lot of that money is going to go in data centers and small modular reactors because you have to power the data centers, and really SMRs are the only reasonable answer, especially now that wind farms are banned in the US. I don't know what's going on there, but you just connect the dots, right? Like, either this is going to be nuclear powered or we're going to run out of coal in a year. And then we're all cooked anyway. So a lot of that money is going to go into data centers. The big winner in all of this, as has been for the last 10 years, is NVIDIA. Jensen Huang is probably secretly rubbing his hands, watching the TV, and with a big smile. I have a slightly cynical view about both the announcements, though. So, like, whilst this is obviously good news, right? Because we do need to build those data centers, right? If we want any form of meaningful AI. The slightly cynical view that I have is that in both cases, well, in one case I know, in the other case, very, very, very strongly suspect, it has nothing to do with the government. So hear me out, at least from the investment side, right? And let's connect some dots and let's talk about Stargate, because it is 20 times bigger than the investment announced in the UK. If you think about Stargate, I want you to rewind, I think about 9 months, 6 months. So there was this rumor that Sam Altman was going around trying to get $2 trillion put together to build all the infrastructure that was needed for AI.
Okay.
Right? And it was a very, very strong rumor. Like, I think at some point even Bloomberg and the Financial Times reported on it. So there is reason to believe that at least some of it is true, right? So the point that I'm going to submit for consideration is this was going to happen anyway. And it was initiated by Sam Altman 6-9 months ago. And then it morphed into what this is. But my point here is that I don't think the administration had anything to do with it other than creating what you could call propaganda around it, right? Because there's no executive order. It's not a new law that's being passed. It's a joint venture between a bunch of companies, right? So really, it is being promoted in association with the new president, but the administration has done nothing. They're not going to put money in. I suspect that, like, in exchange for being associated with the effort, there might be like some tax breaks or whatever, right? You can expect that to happen. And my cynical view about the UK one is a little bit different, which is Labour government we had an AI plan written by Matt Clifford that was pretty much a version of what was announced. And the new Labour government came in, tore that down, repealed the investment in like the data center that was going to be built in Edinburgh, cancelled everything, showed up 2 months later with an AI plan written by Matt Clifford, which includes a large data center, plus some other things, right? Because like that's given, I guess, Matt time to refine it. And Matt is actually a fantastic person with an extreme amount of thought, depth of thought, and vision about these things. And I have a huge amount of respect to him. But I think like he's also been caught in, well, not him personally, but he's been doing the thing that he's been doing really well, right? Which is come up with the plan. But also, like, we had Matt Clifford's plan, and then it got canned, and now we've got Matt Clifford's plan again, right? So my cynicism all relates to politicians, not the actual contents of the plans. I want to make that clear. I think the plans are great.
But I think that goes for... I think politicians have a really difficult job because they've inherited a construct to run economies, and the rules have changed, right?
Yeah.
So you can have business anywhere, based anywhere in the world.
True.
Right? And so, as soon as labor increases the taxes, the millionaires and billionaires go, cool, I'm out of here. And I can still, it doesn't impact my business, right? So now they got a problem. Now, how do we attract them back? Oh, AI, right? So it's just they're trying to find out, ways of which to govern because they don't have, the rules have changed. So
Yeah.
From that sense, I feel sorry for them, but we expect people that govern countries and lead countries to actually have a bit of foresight as well and understand the changing macroeconomics of the world. And maybe it's not them, maybe it's their advisors. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? But it's interesting, no doubt, right? Because it has put AI in the spotlight. The one thing
Yeah.
about Trump, I will say though, is whatever he does, whether you love him or hate him, he is an accelerant, right? So the only way to really find out if something new and novel works is to test it rapidly. We know this. It's almost sort of your basic software development cycle, isn't it? Rapid testing to see where it fails, and then you can improve on it. And so with technology, it's like, okay, screw it. Let's get this 500 billion US investment announced and done, and accelerate and get it done, and maybe it falls over, but we'll know what works and doesn't work. So yeah, I think it's exciting regardless, and there's opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, my challenge is only, and it's only this, like, what is the administration's role in this? Because so far it's not really clear. And if you look at who is in this, it is basically OpenAI's friends, right? If you were going to put together a program that was originated from government, there's like at least 3 elephants in the room right now. The first 2 you can explain politically. Well, actually, no, you can't. Like, there's one that you can explain politically of like, where is Google in all of this?
Yeah.
Right?
Where are they?
And it is known, and it's a fact, that the Trump administration doesn't like Google. But the other 2 elephants in the room were both at the inauguration. Where is Meta? And if this was really originated by the administration, I am 95% sure that Elon Musk would have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Rather than have an argument on LinkedIn with Sam Altman immediately afterwards, right? Because there's XAI and Grok. Where's that investment, right? So I think it's a clear sign to me that this is Sam Altman's original plan being advertised politically.
Which is a stroke of genius for him, right? It's a great move.
Yeah.
I mean, on Elon Musk, there's a bit in the news saying he's reached his limit anyway with what's happening, and you can't have 2 big egos. You can't have Trump and Musk together. So it'd be interesting to see how that relationship pans out. But the other one and I know they haven't really been in the AI conversations, but Apple, like, what's happening with Apple? Are Apple in the mix?
Apple is interesting, right? Because like Apple, I mean, they have, and I've known this since forever, and they've had a really good machine learning research group for a long time, right? So it is, in a sense, a little bit weird that Apple are kind of backseating a lot of this, right? But then you think about how Apple operates, and they're never first to market, right? Exception being the iPhone. Well, actually, I'm going to say this. Since Steve Jobs died, they've never been first to market on anything, right? Even new features on the iPhone. But they go for mature solutions that work well, and they make a really good user experience about it, right? Which was the case, right? If you look at like let's call it like the first generation of assistants, right? We had the Google Assistant, Alexa was first to market, right? By a significant amount of time, by the way. And then Siri came out a lot later, and comparatively, it was a good experience, and it was well integrated into the ecosystem, and that's what makes it a good experience for them. And there's this whole Apple Intelligence thing, which is just a nice marketing play because it spells AI. All right, thank you, slow clap. Um, but I think what we need to see from Apple is effectively turning Siri into an agent.
Mm.
And I imagine that's what's cooking. But agent technologies are so new and untested that they're probably being cautious about it and not saying much.
Yeah.
Right? What we do know is that they did can their self-driving car division not long ago as well. So maybe there's some repositioning in Apple as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, as you say, there's a few emissions, or elephants as you call them, that aren't there. As you know, I've recently jumped over to the Pixel phone, and with that comes Gemini as well. I've been doing a bit of testing. And I recently tested out the 1.5 Pro with deep research, and I was pretty impressed, with what it can do. So it's interesting to see where this technology all goes and takes us. But one thing I wanted to jump back on Stargate with is bring it back to, I think, what's our core audience around project professionals is the fact that Oracle is involved with Stargate. Now, how that translates potentially into Primavera P6, I have no idea. I have my doubts.
Honestly, it won't.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I was thinking. But they could. They should, right? I don't know. Are we giving them too many ideas?
They could, maybe they should. I'll debate that with you, because P6 is effectively, and like the whole Oracle Primavera Cloud suite, like gets so little development and so little progress, right? And most of the new things that come out in Primavera Cloud and Construction Intelligence Cloud and everything else seem to just be marketing. And the reality is that Primavera doesn't really even beep on Larry Ellison's radar, right? So there's so much to fix in P6 and in Primavera Cloud and everything else first, that before you get to being able to do anything with AI, right? That plus the fact that I think for Oracle is purely a play on making Oracle Cloud bigger, right? Oracle Cloud has been the forgotten cloud platform that nobody uses, right? Comparatively to AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud in order of size, right? It is probably about 500 times smaller than either of them, right? So, I mean, it's a smart move, right? It's no secret that Larry Ellison and Sam Altman know each other and are friends. So, who's he going to give the money to? I mean, let's not forget that OpenAI has been exclusively Microsoft data centers up until now, right? And it is a capacity play, right? Like the story that's circulating around is that OpenAI needs more infrastructure than Microsoft can build.
Yeah, aren't they losing money?
OpenAI, yeah. OpenAI is not profitable, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of that is data center costs, right? The curious thing is, like, Oracle Cloud is basically angling for receiving some of that money in cloud computing costs, right? And I guess investing in building the data centers for it, right? And there's no evidence of this, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be some tax write-offs for everybody involved, just because they're associated with the administration. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But I think that's the play, Oracle. Let's try and make Oracle Cloud bigger and get better by association. I guess we'll have to wait and see if that turns out to be true or not, and how much gets built. Back to project professionals, though, the really good thing is how much of this money is just building data centers, right?
Mm.
If you build data centers, you know this already, right? Because you have not been able to answer the phone fast enough with people wanting you to build their data center. That just got 5 times bigger in the US now, right? So all the organizations that build data centers, and you know who you are, good on you. You're
No,
gonna need to hire a lot more people, I imagine, because otherwise you're not gonna build them fast enough, right?
no, absolutely. It's such a changing landscape, and so talking about data centers. So sorry, my mind's going all over the show. So I'm gonna stop it at this point where I am now. So. So talking about data centers, talking about how much it costs, and we need SMRs and all that type of thing. Something that Satya Nadella said the other day was this whole tokens per dollar per watt as a measure.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that important? To
Well,
ordinary
because
folks, like, what does that actually mean? What is a token per dollar per watt?
well, a token's a unit that you can basically think of as about half a word, right? So the way current architectures, and I'm gonna like really put a very thick line under current,
Yeah.
because actually Meta's published some research now that kind of changes this, but current architectures run most LLMs are transformers, and transformers encode and decode to token mappings, and a token is roughly half a word on average, right? So when you put some text in as input and when you receive some text out as output, that is tokens, right? You could do the equivalent calculation of like cost per word as well, and you'd have something that is 90% correlated, right? At least right now. So it's not even just cost per token or tokens per kilowatt hour or whatever unit of energy you want to use, right? So those are the efficiency metrics of this, right? So like that's why smaller models are preferred, right? It's like actually GPT-4 was the biggest model that OpenAI had, and then all the new models, like they'll train a big one, but then they try and shrink it as much as possible, because obviously if you're using 1,000 GPUs to run a model versus if you're using 50, that changes your unit metrics for each token, right? Or more likely, you think about per billion tokens, because a single token just consumes so little. But the other one is like, how many tokens per second can you do, right? Because the faster you can move in tokens per second, those other units go down,
Mm-hmm.
and you can also shift more tokens. So more tokens also equates to being able to do more sophisticated work, right? So why does O1 Pro mode take so long is because what you're not seeing under the hood, like, and they try and expose a little bit of it, but you don't see like even a small part of it. It's just going back and forth with itself thousands of times, reading and producing new tokens at every step, right? So if you speed that up, you sped up Pro mode, you've made it cheaper, uses less energy. It means you have to do less calling per token, all the other things, right? So like, sure, environmental impact as well, but also number of data centers that you have to build. And that's the important part, right? Like, you think about capacity. One side of the equation is how fast are we building capacity, but the other one is how fast are our models? How efficient are they? Because then you need to build less.
So
And you
are the
can keep
two
some of the $500 billion for the ice cream budget.
ice cream? Imagine $500 billion of ice cream. It's like oceans.
Yeah.
We'll get out of your fantasies for a second there, Al. So am I right in saying, and correct me because this is a schooling lesson for me, every episode is, that probably the two key elements of reducing the amount of electricity we require, power and energy, is the technology we have in advancing GPUs or processing, and then
Absolutely.
the models we have, the algorithms behind them. Are those the two
Yeah.
key components?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Like the other side of the equation here is not just GPUs, right? Even other co-processors, let's call them, but for running LLMs, right? And Google have their own thing called a TPU, which is typically a lot more energy efficient and has a lot more capacity than your stereotypical GPU setup. And there's a lot of influence that has, right? So why would you want to buy the more expensive? And also, like, why can NVIDIA afford to make every new generation of GPU cost double the one before? And at some point, hopefully that's going to stop, right? Speaking very selfishly, then pricing, I hope, levels is just because you double the capacity, but it's actually one GPU. So all of a sudden, you're still running at 1,000 watts per GPU, but you're putting out twice the tokens for the same 1,000 watts in the same space, right? Because like every machine that you build, depending on what type you use, it can be 8, 16, or 32 GPUs, right? And then enter the space limitations as well.
Yeah. So okay. So if those are the two key components, and just bear with me with my thought patterns here. If one is, and you could argue that GPUs and improving them are also driven by technology, but let's say that's predominantly because there's hardware, there's materials involved.
Yeah.
The algorithms is all software, and we know that we have AI agents, all these various ways at which we can, it could potentially self-improve, or it does self-improve in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, is that infinite, or is there a ceiling on how much it can improve, how much a model can improve itself to be more efficient? Are there diminishing returns on efficiency, do you think? Or can it, or is it
Well,
limitless?
I don't think we know the answer, and it correlates with, is there a ceiling to actual intelligence, however you measure it, right? Because if you find an architecture that requires less computation to do the same thing, you have the other option of turning up the dial on the computation to do more or be better, right? And it's a little bit shaped like a dip. So you have your local optimal values for call it like intelligence per dollar or intelligence per watt, which is not amount of tokens but quality of the tokens that come out effectively. Because you can go very, very, very fast if you just generate random tokens that mean nothing. Right? You don't even need a GPU for that, but it helps nicely. So better architectures, and ML research is what we're really talking about here. Better architectures come out all the time, but it's how do you combine the efficiency gain? Not efficiency gain, there's two types. There's the training efficiency gain. Can you train a model faster with less resources? And then there's a inference efficiency gain. Can you run that model faster, right? So you got those two things plus model reasoning ability. And Sometimes you'll have gains that do both, but most of the time those things are kind of disjoint. So every time you have something that increases modelability, like large concept models now from Meta, all the things that or not all, but some of the things that we were doing for inference efficiency on large language models that used tokens for words might actually not transfer over. So you kind of have to rewind the loop a little bit and find the new efficiency gains. In terms of self-improvement, I mean, we're getting close to the point where models are going to do some research on how to improve themselves. And this is the interesting debate is at which point will we actually start seeing real self-generated, it was only a model that created this new architecture rather than being driven by a researcher.
So
again, I don't actually know.
Yeah.
Right?
And this is great, right? Because we're sort of dipping our toe into what might be as well. And the reason my mind went that way is if you look at evolution of take any technology, right? In the beginning, not everyone could afford a car, but now everyone drives a car. In the beginning, not everyone could afford to buy a big mobile brick phone, but now everyone has a phone. Not everyone could afford a smartwatch. Now everyone has a smartwatch, etc., etc. So, how long will it take before we have sort of where everyone can own their own little AI that they can control because they can afford it, type thing in a little device, whatever that device might be, where it's a wearable, a chip implanted, a Neuralink in your brain or whatever the case might be. So that was where my mind kind of went with that, maybe rightly or wrongly, but I'm just trying to bring it back to, and just this doesn't just apply to project professionals, but in terms of us being more productive and understanding and connecting with bits of data and understanding context and simplifying complex systems. It's far quicker for a computer to do that than a human. So that's where my mind was going, and I know it was racing all over the show.
Yeah, I mean, there are some considerations. I'll take the skeptical hat on, put the skeptical hat on for a second, right? Which is, we know that the models right now are only able to really model things that they have learned, right? So you can, and this is what we're going to see, right? We're going to see models doing incremental improvement, but not true step change, right? So what, and this is going to be an interesting thing to see. What is the next big development in reasoning models that gets them to be able to come up with a step change in whatever discipline, right? Forget machine learning research for a second.
I honestly think there'll be a lot of people that are terrified of what might be. I'm really excited about, and I'm sure you are as well. And maybe we did geek out a little bit, but that's cool. To go down those routes, because there's so many applications, use cases for the technology that haven't yet been developed, right? Since the last episode, the beginning of this year, and shout out to my good friend Yash. He showed me some pretty cool things he found out over the break, the festive break. And I'll share some of this with the listeners. So bolt.new, do you know bolt.new, Al?
Yeah.
It's amazing. You can go in there and you can just create websites, apps, whatever you want, and just prompt it. And obviously you get to a certain amount of tokens and you have to pay for it and stuff. But you don't need a developer, at a base level,
Well, if you want to look at development, the one that I think is interesting to have a look at is Devin.
Okay.
So Devin it's something that the software engineering community has kept an eye on for a while because it was announced a long time ago and it's only just now been made available publicly. But effectively, Devin does a couple of things that are different from all these other platforms.
So that's
And
devin.ai, devin.ai.
DEVIN, yes, correct.
Yep.
And the cool thing about Devin is that you treat it like a developer.
Ah,
So you send it a message on Slack and you say, I need you to do this. Here's the Jira ticket. Goes and looks at the Jira ticket, starts working in a development environment. It's got its own version of Visual Studio Code. You can actually go and look at what it's doing, and I'll explain to you what it's doing. And then you can intervene. You can tell it, no, stop. I actually don't need you to do this in this way. You can do it a different way. But then it will make a pull request on GitHub, which is what developers do when they make a change, typically. And it will respond to the comments on the pull request. So it goes through the exact same process that a developer does, and you interact with it in the exact same way. And for me, that's like the interesting applications, right? There are a lot of limitations right now, and this is one of my favorite attitudes is so there's a YouTube channel called 2 Minute Papers, and it's been going for a long time. I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically what the guy does is he'll try and explain a very exciting recent research paper in 2 minutes, right? And one of the things that he says very frequently is, this is where we are today. Think where we're going to be 2 research papers down the line, right? And a lot of the time he does that looking backwards. It's like, look at what we've done today. So like he did a recent one about VO, right, which is Google's video model. He says, like, look at where we were 6 months ago on these models, right? So like, if you look at where we are now, there's limitations, and we'll only do small changes in terms of Devin, but the workflow is there now, right? So where will Devin be in 6 months or a year as models improve as well?
Yeah. So these things are coming out, right? And firsthand over how long has NPN been going now? 7, 8 years? Is it the 8th?
Yeah, seven and a bit.
You'd probably look back and go, it's exponential in terms of how things have built on top of each other in terms of how much you're able to do, right? And what happened in this past year versus what happened in your first year is probably incomparable, right? In terms of how far you've progressed. And that's no different to anything else because doubling is easy. So it's going to be fascinating at the beginning of 2026, season 3, when we look back. Okay.
When Val will show up.
Yeah, when Val will show up. And
that'll be the big news.
Yeah, and then we'll go, remember that SAS thing? But I wanted to also share a few other things with folks on the podcast this year as well, some useful tools that are out there that they can use. And the other one that's pretty cool, if you stuck for time and you need to put a presentation together quickly, is gamma.app. I don't know if you use that one, Al. So gamma.app.
Yeah.
That's really cool as well. Presentations done really, really quickly. Are there any other cool productivity hacks that you've come across?
One of my recent favorites has been something called Napkin.
Okay.
So in Napkin, it's designed for a very specific problem, but it's a problem that everybody I know has had with some degree of recurrency, which is you have a concept, you can explain the concept, but you don't know how to make a diagram that isn't insane to explain the concept. And so what you do with Napkin is you dump in your documents that you already have that explain the thing that you're trying to diagram, and it comes back with a visual representation of the thing that you're trying to explain.
This is gold. I literally just this past week was looking
I'm telling you, though, everybody has that problem.
Yeah. So Napkin, folks, napkin.ai.
Yeah.
I've just got onto it. It looks pretty cool. But there's all of these productivity hacks, right? And you can use. So here's the thing at the human level, because we've often spoken, especially over the first season, we've spoken about concepts and use cases and all these different things. But what we're starting to see now is specific use cases that people can go in and use, and they can see it straight away.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay, here is a handful of sentences prompted, and all of a sudden you get a 10 slide deck, right, with pictures, and it's all formatted and stuff. Here's a document of something I've written down. Boom, here's your diagrams coming out. So I think it's, this year is really, really going to be one where we got to take stock of, how can we use this? And again, I'll say it's not too late to get on the journey. You're not being left behind by any means, because you can go back and listen from episode 1 if you want to pick up some of the more basic stuff, because I think probably the first 5, Al, yourself and Greg were schooling me on the basics, right? And so hopefully people have come along the journey with me. But I think this year is going to be pretty cool as well. But look, was there anything else that you wanted to put on the table?
Yes, I have a point, and it's the point that I'm going to leave you with, right? Because what you just said about, you're going to have and this is what, maybe you could call them point solutions.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is the hangover of SaaS in the startup model. So the point solution is the thing that every VC and every startup incubator has been drilling into everybody, just do one thing well and get product market fit on the one thing and do that. And it's better to have 10 people that absolutely adore you than 1,000 people that think you're okay, right? And so now we're in that phase where you can structure, let's call it an architecture around some LLMs to do one thing well, right? And that is pretty much a known way of doing things now. But the reality is that we're going to shift to agentic behavior, and agentic behavior is not like that, right? Agentic solutions, you hand over the problem and they choose the tools.
Yep.
Right. So all these point solutions, forget the fact that, if you use more than 5 of them, then you got 5 subscriptions, and everybody's obsessed with recurring revenue. So you can't actually use credit systems I'll pay for just what I need. But eventually there's going to be a conflation phase, right? And it may happen by virtue of models and agents get so good that they build their own tools to do the things. Or it may happen, which is probably faster, by large operators buying smaller point solutions and integrating them in their agent as tools that get used. Right? And I think that's what we're going to see next. Maybe, 2026, 2027, but it's going to start becoming a unification of platforms where then you have one agent, right? And you say to the agent, I want to do X, Y, Z, and that agent might go and pull stuff out of Procore and throw it into some other stuff, and it might edit stuff in P6. I don't know, right? But it won't be one point solution. It won't be many point solutions. It'll be one thing that coordinates all of it.
Yeah, it's good to see where the roadmap might head. And that's good foresight as well for folks listening, I think, because yes, we can get excited about what's available now, but what does this mean for the future? And the reason that's important is because when we talk about the future, we don't mean in 5 or 10 years' time or 20 years' time. We mean in 12 months' time, in 6 months' time, right?
Yeah.
That's how fast we're developing. So, yeah. Look, we're heading towards the end of the pod. We like to keep these sort of around about 45 minutes so folks can listen short and sharp on their commute, perhaps, or wherever they like to sun
Yeah.
themselves, or maybe for some soothing, calming, relaxing listening, or putting them to sleep, perhaps even, Al, I don't know. Was there any final thoughts for our first episode of season 2?
No, I think that was for me the final thought that I had in my head, is that it's going to start at some point conflating.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, let's leave it there on that point. Plenty to ponder, as usual. Hope the new year has started off well for you. Be inquisitive, be optimistic. There's lots happening. There is a lot of volatility. There's a lot of frustration. People are perhaps a bit tentative with what's happening in the market, and confused and frustrated. But I think approach it with a bit of optimism. Reach out to Al, myself, Greg, Val, if you want to have a word about what's happening as well. We're always free to have a chat.
Yeah.
But look, Al, it's good to see you. Safe travels back.
Good to see you as well.
UK, and we'll catch everyone on the next episode. So thank you, folks. Thanks for spending this time with us, and we'll catch up with you on the next one. Bye for now.
Cheers.